Her scream never left my ears. One second, I was standing in the garage, 17, just grabbing a soda before rejoining Sarah's promotion party. The next, my feet slid out from under me, crashing hard onto the cold concrete. My back exploded in pain. I couldn't feel my legs, but instead of rushing to me, my sister leaned in the doorway laughing, her voice slicing through the ringing in my ears. "Relax, Em. It's just a prank." I begged, my throat raw. "I can't move. I can't feel anything." And then came the words that shattered me deeper than the fall itself. My father, his beer clenched tight, snarled across the garage. "Walk it off. Stop faking." But worse, my mother crouched low, perfume choking me, her whisper colder than the concrete under my body. "You've always been a drama queen, Emily. Quit trying to steal Sarah's spotlight." That wasn't just betrayal, that was erasure. The party roared on outside, laughter and clinking glasses drowning my pleas, while I lay paralyzed, invisible, erased by the very people meant to protect me. And yet, that night would uncover a truth darker than their cruelty. Because when the MRI came back, detectives were called into the room, and suddenly my family's perfect mask began to crack. Funny how one fall can open the door to secrets you never should have known. So tell me, if you've ever been dismissed as too dramatic while you were drowning in pain, don't hold back. Leave me a comment with the word empathy. Let's see how many of us were erased by the ones who should have loved us most. 3 months earlier. The first thing I remember is the cold. Not the kind of cold that brushes your skin when the ocean breeze sneaks in from the coast, but the kind that claws straight through muscle and bone until you can't feel where your body ends. I was lying flat on the garage floor, concrete pressing into my spine, the taste of metal filling my mouth as though blood had seeped all the way up into my teeth. The laughter outside carried in on the wind, bright and careless, like nothing in the world had gone wrong. But for me, everything had already broken. Pain shot up my back in jagged waves, like someone dragging a blade through me again and again. I tried to move, but my legs didn't answer. I tried to push up with my hands, but my arms shook so violently that I collapsed back onto the slick floor. The smell of motor oil and damp rubber filled my lungs, suffocating me more than the pain itself. A voice inside me whispered, "This can't be happening. This can't be real." But it was. I had gone numb from the waist down. I heard the door swing open above me, a burst of sunlight from the backyard party spilling into the dark garage. Music thudded like a second heartbeat, heavy bass, cheerful voices rising with the California sun. My father's silhouette appeared in the doorway, his jaw tight, his beer bottle clutched too firmly. Instead of reaching for me, he barked across the space like a drill sergeant. "Stand up, Emily! Quit the act!" My throat burned as I tried to speak. I can't move." The words cracked, barely escaping, but his eyes didn't soften. They narrowed like I was some kind of inconvenience, an actor in a bad play he didn't care to watch. Then my mother stepped forward, her perfume drifting in before she did. Her hair perfect, smile frozen in place, she leaned closer just long enough for her words to slash me deeper than the fall ever could. "You're ruining Sarah's day." That sentence, it cut through me sharper than the pain in my spine. My own body had betrayed me, and now so had they. Their laughter echoed, their indifference heavier than the concrete I lay on. My sister's voice drifted faintly from the yard, joking with her friends, her promotion party unfolding like a glossy, picture-perfect scene, and there I was, hidden in the shadows, invisible, discarded. I tried again to drag myself forward, the palms of my hands slipping against the oil-slick floor. My fingernails scraped so hard that they bent back, but even that pain seemed far away compared to the hollow terror spreading inside me. My head spun, the garage light bulb buzzing faintly above like it was mocking me, and I realized I wasn't just hurt, I was abandoned. Their footsteps retreated. The music swelled again, the smell of barbecue smoke drifting in, the sound of clinking glasses and shallow laughter. They left me there, paralyzed, humiliated, unseen. I thought betrayal would come with a grand gesture, some dramatic revelation, but the truth is uglier. It came as dismissal, the shrug of a father, the whisper of a mother, the smirk of a sister who wanted me erased. The spinning in my head grew louder, drowning out the party noise until only my inner voice remained. Their laughter hurt more than the fall. I was invisible to them. Invisible. That word dug into me, hollowing out everything inside. I wanted to scream, to demand that they look at me, to force them to see that I wasn't faking, that this wasn't another one of Sarah's games I had fallen for. But no sound came out, just shallow gasps, my own body refusing me even that last dignity. Somewhere beyond the walls, the ocean waves crashed against the shore, steady and uncaring, as if the world had already decided I wasn't worth saving. And yet, as my eyes blurred, one thought crystallized through the haze of pain and betrayal. If they could abandon me here, in this moment when I needed them most, what else were they capable of hiding? What secrets had they buried behind those smiles, those polished family photos, that perfect coastal home? It was the day my body broke. But more than that, it was the day the illusion of family shattered. So I ask you, have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most? If your pain has ever been ignored, if you've ever been told to quit the act while you were drowning in it, then you already know how it feels to lie invisible on a cold floor, begging to be seen. Comment where you're watching from. Like and subscribe if you want to hear how betrayal didn't just change my life, it almost ended it. Because this is only the beginning. When I think about my childhood, people always imagine it must have been picture perfect. After all, we lived in a sleek coastal house in California with white walls that gleamed in the sun, windows that framed the ocean like an oil painting, and furniture my mother made sure looked straight out of a magazine. To the outside world, we were the ideal family. Successful father, glamorous mother, 2 daughters with bright futures. But inside those walls, it was something else entirely. I remember being 8 years old, clutching my diary against my chest as if it were my only friend. The leather cover smelled faintly of ink and the cheap perfume I had sprayed on it, hoping that somehow it would feel more like mine, more like something safe. But nothing was ever safe in that house, not even my thoughts. Because Sarah, my older sister, made a sport out of finding my hiding places. I'd slip the diary under my pillow or wedge it behind my bed frame, but somehow she always managed to find it. One night I tucked it into a shoebox in my closet, burying it under socks and an old sweater. My heart pounded as if I were concealing state secrets. I whispered to myself, "This time she won't get it. This time, it's mine." But the next morning, I came to school to find kids circling me, snickering. Someone read aloud words I had written only to myself, about a crush, about how invisible I felt, about how I wished Sarah would just leave me alone. My diary had turned into their script for laughter. My pain served on a platter for everyone else's amusement. I ran home, face burning, tears stinging, and burst into the living room where my parents sat. My father, Robert, sat behind his laptop, his glasses perched low on his nose, typing with the steady rhythm of a man who believed the world only functioned on hard logic and endurance. My mother, Linda, was painting her nails, the sharp chemical smell filling the room. "She read my diary again," I shouted, my voice trembling, desperate for someone, anyone, to take me seriously. Robert barely looked up. "You're too sensitive, Emily. Learn to toughen up." His voice was flat, like he was diagnosing a software bug, not addressing his daughter's heartache. Linda sighed dramatically, shaking her head so her blonde hair swung just right in the light. "Sarah's just being playful. You know how she is." Her tone dripped with dismissal, as though Sarah's cruelty was some charming little quirk. I stared at them, my mouth open, searching for words. Didn't they hear me? Didn't they see the tears streaming down my face? But Sarah appeared behind me in the hallway, a grin stretching wide as she leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed like a victor. Her smirk told me she had already won, and my parents' silence was her trophy. That was the moment I learned that my tears didn't matter in that house. From then on, I stopped running to them. I started burying my pain deep, folding it into the corners of myself where no one could reach. At night, when the waves crashed outside and the house creaked in the wind, I would lie awake and press my palms into my eyes, as if I could push the hurt back inside, keep it from spilling out where she could grab it and turn it against me. Sarah's pranks escalated as we got older. She once replaced my math homework with scribbles and cartoons, and when I was scolded in front of the class, she laughed from the back row. Another time, she accidentally spread a rumor that I had wet the bed during a sleepover. Each time, I would glance at my parents, hoping for some flicker of recognition, some shred of fairness. But Robert would mutter that I needed to stop whining, and Linda would remind me that Sarah just has a sense of humor you don't understand. At school, whispers followed me like a shadow. Kids pointed, giggled, called me names I never dared repeat out loud. My face burned each time, my chest tightening until I thought it might crack. I would sit in the corner of the playground, hugging my knees, watching Sarah surrounded by friends, adored by teachers, praised for her charm. She was the golden child, and I was the ghost trailing behind her glow. I used to ask myself, what's wrong with me? Why can't they love me the way they love her? I tried harder. I brought home good grades, cleaned up without being asked, even smiled through the ache when Sarah mocked me at the dinner table. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. The house itself seemed to echo that favoritism. Sarah's bedroom was larger, with bay windows that looked out onto the sea, her shelves stacked with trophies and ribbons. My room was smaller, tucked at the end of the hall where the ocean view was nothing more than a sliver of blue if I craned my neck. I decorated it with paper cutouts and hand-drawn posters, because while Sarah was showered with gifts, new clothes, gadgets, trips, I was left with scraps and reminders that I shouldn't expect more. Looking back now, I realized that Sarah's cruelty was not just a sister's meanness. It was a pattern, a deliberate tearing down, brick by brick, of my sense of worth. And my parents let her do it. Worse, they encouraged it by refusing to see me. I can still hear Robert's words ringing in my ears. "You're too sensitive, Emily." Each time he said it, I felt myself shrink smaller, as though sensitivity was a sin. And Linda, with her endless need for appearances, brushing aside my tears with that same line, "Sarah's just being playful." Playful, as if public humiliation was a game. Their dismissals weren't just words, they were confirmations that I didn't matter. And once you start believing you don't matter, you begin to disappear, even to yourself. I learned to lock my feelings away, to plaster on a smile when people looked too closely. On the outside, I was a quiet, polite girl. On the inside, I was screaming, desperate to be seen. And maybe that's why, years later, lying paralyzed on that garage floor, their laughter echoing around me, it didn't surprise me as much as it should have. It was just the cruel continuation of what had always been true. I learned to bury my pain. They never saw me. Tell me, have you ever wondered why some kids are born golden and others are made invisible, even under the same roof? Why was I never enough for them? By the time I was 16, Sarah's pranks had stopped being childish antics. They had sharpened into something crueler, calculated. I can still see the glow of the computer screen the night I discovered what she had done. My phone buzzed nonstop, notifications exploding with laughing emojis and cruel comments. My social media page had been hijacked. Sarah had posted a fake status pretending to be me, mocking myself, painting me as desperate, clingy, pathetic. By the next morning, kids I thought were my friends wouldn't even look me in the eye. At lunch, the cafeteria was a minefield of whispers and stares. I sat alone, pushing my food around the tray, every laugh from across the room landing like a slap against my skin. That night, my anger boiled over. I stormed into the kitchen where Sarah lounged at the counter, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. My voice cracked, raw with humiliation. "Why would you do that? Why do you hate me so much?" She didn't even look guilty. She smirked, tilting her head, the glow of her screen lighting her face like a stage spotlight. "Relax, Em. It's just a joke. People need to stop taking you so seriously." Her laugh was sharp, echoing against the glass windows. I turned to my father, Robert, who stood by the counter with his usual beer in hand. His eyes never left the television, his expression carved from stone. Without a flicker of sympathy, he muttered, "Grow up, Emily." Just 3 words, but they slammed into me harder than any insult from Sarah. And my mother? Linda sat nearby, her nails painted in glossy red that caught the kitchen lights. She crossed her arms, looked me up and down, and sighed like I was nothing more than a nuisance. "Sarah doesn't whine like you," she said coolly. The way she said it, like it was an undeniable truth, burned worse than Sarah's laughter. In that moment, I felt the last thread snap. I stopped expecting rescue. But something changed a few months later, on a rainy afternoon when the house smelled of wet carpet and dust. The storm outside rattled the windows, and the sound of rain drummed steadily on the roof. I wandered into my mother's walk-in closet, a place she usually guarded like a vault. Her rows of shoes sat in perfect lines, silk scarves folded with military precision. Everything about the space screamed control, image, perfection. Yet in the corner, stacked beneath old handbags, I spotted a box. It wasn't like anything else in there. Plain, wooden, its brass clasp dulled with age. Dust coated the grooves, thick enough to tell me no one had touched it in years. My pulse quickened as I pulled it out, the box heavier than it looked, like it carried something it wasn't meant to. Why would my mother, who displayed every photograph and trophy so proudly, hide this away? The lock gave easily, snapping open with a soft click. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were faded photographs, letters tied with ribbon, and one envelope that caught my eye immediately. My mother's handwriting scrawled across it read, "The mistake we can never admit." I froze, the words burning into me. Carefully, I slid the letter halfway out. The paper was fragile, the ink slightly smeared, but one thing was unmistakable: Sarah's name. And then a line that made my stomach twist until I thought I would be sick. The will must remain in her favor, no matter what. My breath caught. The room suddenly felt colder, the hum of the rain outside fading into a low roar. A will? A mistake tied to Sarah? My mother's obsession with appearances suddenly didn't look like vanity anymore. It looked like fear, like desperation. My hands shook as I shoved the letter back into the envelope, slammed the lid shut, and pushed the box deep into the corner again. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like the walls might echo it back to me. That single glimpse was enough to crack everything I thought I knew. That evening at dinner, Sarah mocked me for being ignored at school, her fork tapping against her plate with casual cruelty. Normally, I would have bowed my head, swallowed the humiliation, but this time I just stared at her. My mind replayed the letter, the words, "The will must remain in her favor." Did she know? Was her cruelty fueled by some secret safety net my parents had promised her? I didn't dare ask. I didn't dare show that I knew anything at all. But inside, a new resolve hardened. At 18, I packed my bags for college 3 states away. I told my parents it was about independence, about chasing opportunities. The truth was simpler. I needed to breathe without their shadows pressing down on me. I needed distance, a chance to become more than the girl they had buried beneath favoritism and secrets. I can still remember that drive. The coastal house grew smaller in my rearview mirror, the ocean flashing silver under the sun, waves glittering like they were waving me goodbye. My chest ached with fear and exhilaration. As the road stretched out before me, I whispered under my breath, "This is the beginning of my escape." College wasn't glamorous. My dorm room was cramped, the mattress thin, the air thick with the scent of ramen and laundry detergent. But it was mine. For the first time, no one stole my diary. No one twisted my words. Silence in that little space wasn't punishment anymore. It was freedom. I buried myself in psychology, maybe unconsciously searching for answers. Why had my family been the way it was? Why had Sarah's cruelty been allowed to grow unchecked? Why had my pain been so invisible? When I learned that the campus offered therapy, I signed up, nervous, terrified even, but desperate. My first session is etched into me. The office was warm, a small lamp glowing in the corner, the faint smell of peppermint tea lingering in the air. The therapist leaned forward, eyes steady, and said, "You're safe here. You can say anything." The words cracked me open. For years, I had been silenced, dismissed, erased. Now my voice filled the room, trembling but real. Week by week, I began to stitch myself back together. The scars were still there, but they were mine, not Sarah's, not Robert's, not Linda's. And yet, no matter how many miles I put between myself and that coastal house, the memory of that letter haunted me. At night, when the dorm fell silent except for the hum of the heater, I would close my eyes and see those words etched in ink. The mistake we can never admit. The will must remain in her favor. What mistake? What secret bound my family so tightly to Sarah, even at my expense? That letter was a crack in their perfect mask. What were they hiding? It had been 6 months since I last saw them. 6 months of silence that felt like a thin layer of safety stretched over a pit of old wounds. I was sitting in my small apartment on a quiet Sunday morning when my phone buzzed across the coffee table. The vibration made the chipped ceramic mug next to it rattle, echoing louder than it should have in the silence. The screen lit up with my mother's name, Linda. I stared at it for a long moment, my stomach tightening. Every instinct told me not to answer, but my hand moved on its own. "Hello?" I whispered, already bracing myself. Her voice was cheerful, too polished. "Emily, darling, Sarah's promotion party is next weekend. She wants you there. It would mean a lot to her. And to us." The words dripped with the same practiced sweetness she used with neighbors and church friends, the kind that masked 1,000 cracks underneath. My heart sank. I hadn't forgotten the last time I'd been in that house, the sharp words, the favoritism, the way I'd left carrying shame heavier than my suitcase. "I don't think," I began, but she cut me off, her tone hardening just slightly. "Sarah will be so happy you're coming. Don't disappoint her." It wasn't a request. It never was. When I hung up, my hands trembled, and for a brief moment I thought maybe I could ignore it, let the call sink into silence. But then, minutes later, another buzz lit up my phone. A text message, this one from Sarah. "Don't trip up at the party, sis." 6 words. That was all it took to turn my veins to ice. I read it again, my throat closing. "Don't trip up." The words pulsed on the screen like a flashing warning sign. Her mockery had always carried a threat behind it, and this was no different. My thumb hovered over the screen, wanting to delete it, wanting to pretend I hadn't seen it. But it lingered there, coiled and venomous, like a snake curling tighter around my chest. I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe, in and out, just like my therapist had taught me. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. The only thing that steadied me. I whispered under my breath, "You're safe. You can handle this." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Images from the past flickered through me like quick cuts in a movie. Sarah reading my diary out loud to classmates, her laughter ringing as I cried. Robert telling me to toughen up when my heart had already been shredded. Linda sighing that Sarah didn't whine like I did, dismissing my tears as though they were dirt on her polished floor. Their voices haunted me, overlapping until it was impossible to separate memory from fear. So why was I even considering going? I told myself it was closure, that I was stronger now. Therapy had given me tools, grounding exercises, breathing techniques, words to remind myself that their cruelty didn't define me. Maybe part of me wanted to prove it, that I could walk back into that house and not be crushed by it. Or maybe it was just that old, tired hunger for acceptance, the one I swore I'd buried years ago. The day of the party arrived, and I found myself standing by my apartment door with keys in hand, staring at the knob as though turning it would seal my fate. The air in my apartment was still, smelling faintly of detergent and yesterday's coffee grounds. Outside, the coastal sun burned bright, the kind of flawless California day that seemed too cruel to waste on dread. When I finally stepped into my car, the seatbelt clicked louder than usual, like a warning bell. The engine hummed, and as I pulled onto the highway, the ocean spread out to my right, endless and glittering. The salty breeze seeped through the cracked window, cool against my skin, but instead of calming me, it felt like the air before a storm. Every mile closer to that house tightened something inside me. My chest felt heavy, my palms damp against the steering wheel. The sun flashed off the waves, blinding, making me squint. I turned the radio on, hoping for distraction, but the cheerful music felt hollow, mocking. I turned it off again, left with nothing but the sound of my tires humming against the asphalt and the echo of Sarah's text in my head. "Don't trip up at the party, sis." Her words coiled tighter, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just a joke. They were a setup, a prelude. I thought about turning back, taking the exit that would lead me home instead of toward them. My hands even twitched toward the blinker. But I kept driving, as if some invisible string tied me to that house, pulling me closer whether I wanted it or not. By the time the turnoff to the neighborhood appeared, my stomach was in knots. My mother's voice rang in my ears, "Sarah will be so happy you're coming." But I knew better. Sarah didn't want me there out of love. She wanted me there as a target. The closer I got, the more I couldn't ignore the thought that I was walking straight into something I couldn't see, something waiting for me like a trap already set. Her text felt like a snake coiling. I should have turned back, but I didn't. Was I heading into a trap? The driveway shimmered with polished chrome, a line of luxury cars angled just so, as though each one had been parked for display. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus. Their glossy hoods reflected the bright California sun, creating blinding flashes that made me squint. At the center sat a sleek black Tesla, spotless, humming faintly, as if even at rest it was alive. My own car, an aging sedan with dull paint and a cracked windshield, looked like an intruder among them. I hesitated before turning off the engine, my fingers clenched around the steering wheel, the faint smell of salt water drifting in from the ocean beyond. I wanted to leave. My chest ached with the thought of backing out, escaping this entire scene before it could swallow me whole. But instead, I opened the door, the heat from the asphalt rising through my shoes, the laughter spilling from the backyard already cutting at me before I had even entered. The front door swung open as I reached the steps. My mother appeared, dressed in a pale blue dress that looked like it belonged in a catalog, her hair perfectly curled, lipstick sharp. She leaned forward, but her cheek never touched mine, an air kiss, precise and cold. Her perfume, expensive and floral, filled my nose. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, pausing at my navy dress and simple flats. The corner of her mouth twitched before she plastered on a smile. "You could have dressed fancier, Emily," she murmured, voice dripping with practiced sweetness. I swallowed hard. My dress had felt appropriate when I left my apartment. Modest, neat, something safe. Now it felt like a mistake. Too plain, too small for this place. Forcing a smile, I whispered back, "It's nice to see you too, Mom." She didn't reply. She just turned smoothly, gesturing for me to follow, already focused on greeting another guest at the door. Inside, the house sparkled with the same staged perfection I remembered. The scent of grilled meat wafted in from the patio, mixed with the tang of wine and perfume. Guests laughed, voices overlapping, their words like static against the pit forming in my stomach. I drifted toward the garage, where the noise shifted into something sharper, male laughter, clinking glasses, and there he was, Mike. He leaned against that Tesla like it was a throne, holding a drink, his shirt crisp, his watch gleaming in the sunlight spilling through the open door. His smirk hadn't changed since high school, though the lines of his face were sharper now, his confidence deeper. His eyes landed on me, and that smirk grew, just enough to send me back to the hallways where he and Sarah had cornered me, made me the punchline of their games. My throat tightened. I turned away quickly, my pulse thudding in my ears. The backyard spread out like something from a magazine spread. Ocean glittering behind the patio, white balloons swaying lazily in the breeze. A banner stretched across the yard in bold gold letters. "Congratulations, Sarah." Guests circled tables heavy with food and wine, sunlight flashing off glasses, chatter swelling and breaking like waves. And in the middle of it all, Sarah. She was radiant in a fitted designer dress, hair styled to perfection, her laugh carrying easily across the yard. People clustered around her, smiling, clapping her back, hanging on her every word. She looked like the center of the universe, and everyone here seemed content to orbit around her. Near her, a table displayed gifts piled high. Ribbons curled elegantly, wrapping paper shimmered in the sun. I spotted a brand new laptop, the exact model I'd once dreamed of saving for but never could. Beside it, designer clothes still in their bags, delicate fabric spilling from tissue paper. An envelope peeked out, thick with vouchers for an exclusive course she'd been talking about for months. Every gift screamed indulgence, proof that she was cherished, admired, celebrated. And then my eyes fell on mine. A plain white envelope resting on the edge of the table, almost lost among the glittering packages. Inside, a $100 gift card, simple, modest, small. My stomach twisted as the memory of my last birthday surfaced, my parents handing me a grocery voucher with little ceremony, no cake, no balloons, just a rushed happy birthday, before they hurried off to something else. Meanwhile, Sarah's birthdays had always been full of sparkle and excess. The contrast was blinding. As I stood there, caught in that wave of shame, Sarah's eyes found me across the crowd. She smiled, slow and deliberate, her lips curving like a blade. She made her way toward me, her heels clicking against the patio, and the people around her shifted to make space as if they knew she demanded it. When she reached me, her eyes flicked briefly to the gift table before settling on me again. Her smile widened, all teeth. "Nice card, sis," she said, her tone thick with sarcasm. The words landed heavier than they should have. They weren't just about the card. They were about the imbalance that had always existed. Her abundance, my scarcity. Her status, my invisibility. I forced a laugh, but my voice caught, thin and brittle. "I thought it would be useful," I said, trying to sound casual. Her smirk sharpened, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction, as if my discomfort was exactly what she had hoped for. She turned away just as smoothly as she had arrived, drifting back into the circle of admiration that awaited her. I stood frozen, heat crawling up my neck, the salty air stinging my lungs as if the ocean itself were pressing down on me. My mother floated past, balancing a tray of glasses, her smile perfect for the guests she charmed. But when her eyes flicked to me, I saw it, the faint look of irritation, like I was a blemish on an otherwise flawless portrait. She looked away quickly, returning to her performance, as if I had already disappeared. I tried to steady myself, breathing in the smell of grilled meat, the sound of the waves crashing just beyond the fence. But each laugh from the crowd, each shimmer of ribbon on the gift table, each glance toward Mike in the garage pulled me deeper into that familiar place, the outsider, tolerated but never welcomed. Their gifts for her glowed, mine was nothing. How much worse would this get? The longer the evening went on, the louder the party became. The backyard pulsed with noise, music thumping, bottles clinking, the sharp tang of beer and wine mixing with smoke from the grill. The salty air off the ocean should have been refreshing, but instead it pressed heavy against me, trapping me in a haze of sound and scent. I tried to stay invisible at the edge of the patio, nursing a glass of water, but my sister made sure that wasn't possible. Sarah had gathered a circle of her friends around her, the kind who laughed at anything she said, no matter how cruel. Their voices carried easily over the music, and then I heard my name. "Remember when Emily cried for 3 days after I read her diary out loud in class?" Sarah said, grinning. The laughter that followed was explosive, loud enough to drown out the bass from the speakers. One boy nearly dropped his beer as he doubled over, his face red. I froze, my stomach flipping, as every eye seemed to glance toward me before returning to Sarah, confirming what I already knew. I was their favorite target. Heat rushed to my face, shame clawing its way up my throat. Years had passed since that prank, but in that moment it was as if I were 14 again, standing helpless in a cafeteria full of laughter that wasn't mine. Sarah's eyes found me. Her grin widened, wolfish, triumphant. She raised her drink and staggered a little, her act exaggerated, then shouted across the yard, "Chill out, sis! It's just a party!" Her friends howled, egged on by her performance. Before I could retreat, she was already pushing through the crowd toward me, her heels clicking against the patio tiles. She shoved a red plastic cup into my hand so suddenly that beer sloshed over the rim, soaking into my dress. The smell was sour, bitter, burning my nose. "Come on, Emily," she said sweetly, though her eyes glimmered with malice. "Don't be such a buzzkill." "I don't want it," I said quietly, trying to hand it back. But she tilted the cup closer, spilling more onto me. The cold liquid dripped down my arm, sticky against my skin. "Of course you don't," she said, smirking. "You never want to have fun." Her friends cackled behind her, the sound rising in cruel harmony. My throat closed, words lodged there, useless. My hands shook as I shoved the cup back at her and turned away. I needed air, space, anything to escape their eyes. I slipped into the house and headed toward the garage. The thump of music softened into a muffled vibration, replaced by the faint buzz of the ceiling bulb above. The garage was dim, shadows stretching across the concrete floor. My chest heaved, trying to calm the storm inside me. And then it happened. My foot hit something slick. For a fraction of a second, my body hovered in midair, weightless, and then the world spun sideways. The floor rushed up to meet me, and there was no time to brace, no time to catch myself. Impact. The back of my head cracked against the concrete, the sound deafening inside my skull. Fire shot down my spine, searing pain that stole my breath. My lungs convulsed as I gasped, desperate for air. But the pain was already shifting into something worse. Silence, numbness, my legs vanished. I tried to wiggle my toes, kick, move, anything. But there was nothing. My body below the waist was gone, erased. Panic thundered in my chest, so loud it drowned out the muffled party outside. The door swung open, spilling light and voices into the garage. Shadows stretched across the walls as Sarah and her friends crowded in. "Oh my God," one of them whispered. "She actually fell." And then Sarah laughed. Her smirk was wide, careless, the kind that told me she wasn't sorry, not even a little. "It was a prank, just for a splash," she announced, throwing her hands up as if she were defending herself in a game. "I spilled a little oil on the floor. She was supposed to slip into the pool." Her laugh was too loud, jarring, cutting through the buzzing in my head. The words struck harder than the concrete had. A prank. She had done this. She wanted me to fall. And the sickest part, she thought it was funny. I tried to speak, but my voice came out broken, thin. I can't move." They stared down at me, their faces caught between confusion and doubt. Some of them exchanged glances, and I saw it in their eyes. They thought I was acting. Just another scene in Sarah's endless comedy at my expense. Tears blurred my vision, hot and humiliating, mixing with the sting of the concrete pressed against my cheek. The laughter above me blurred with the ringing in my ears until I felt like I was drowning in noise. And then, through the haze, I saw it. In the far corner of the garage, tucked high near the ceiling, a faint red light blinked. A camera, recording, watching. The tiny glow pulsed steadily, like a hidden heartbeat, like an eye that never blinked. My breath hitched. Who had put it there? Why was it recording? Shock and terror coiled tighter in my chest. My legs were gone, my sister was laughing, and somewhere in the shadows someone had been waiting, watching it all unfold. My mind screamed one thought again and again. Who set up that camera? The garage floor was ice against my skin, the chill seeping deeper with every second that passed. My breath came in shallow gasps, my throat raw from begging, "Please, I can't move, somebody help me!" The words echoed off the concrete walls, fragile and thin against the roar of laughter spilling in from the backyard. For a split second, I thought maybe someone would notice. Maybe the party noise would stop and panic would ripple through the crowd. But no. The music kept pounding, bass vibrating through the floor, glasses clinking, voices rising in careless celebration. My pain was nothing but background noise. And then Sarah filled the doorway. Light from the patio framed her figure, turning her into a silhouette of cruel confidence. She tilted her head, taking in the sight of me sprawled on the floor, trembling, my face pale with terror. Her friends clustered behind her, their giggles bubbling like a cruel soundtrack. "Nice acting, sis," she called out, her tone sing-song, mocking. The group erupted. Their laughter filled the garage, bouncing off every corner, magnified until it drowned out my own voice. One girl slapped her knee, another boy doubled over, holding his stomach. To them, I wasn't broken. I was entertainment. Tears burned hot in my eyes. "I'm not acting," I cried, my voice cracking. "I can't feel my legs." Sarah's smirk deepened. She rolled her eyes dramatically and leaned against the wall, sipping her drink like she was watching a casual performance. "You're always so dramatic," she said, letting the words linger in the air like poison. And then my father's voice cut through, louder than all of it. Robert stormed in, his face flushed, the smell of whiskey strong as he glared down at me. His jaw was tight, his hand clenched around his glass. "Get up!" he barked, his tone sharp enough to slice through my chest. "Don't embarrass us in front of the guests. The garage is safe. There's nothing wrong with you." I stared at him, my lips trembling. "Dad, I can't." My voice was barely a whisper, fragile, pleading, but his eyes hardened. He turned his back, muttering to the men beside him, dismissing me as if I were an inconvenience, a child throwing a tantrum. Laughter from the patio swelled, mocking me even louder, swallowing my cries. Then came Linda. Her heels clicked against the concrete, steady, deliberate. She moved slowly, her posture elegant, her face calm. For one desperate second, hope sparked in me. I thought she might kneel, take my hand, call out for help. She bent down until her perfume choked me, until her face hovered inches from mine. Her eyes, though, sharp, glassy, unfeeling, and then her whisper, "You've always been a drama queen, Emily. Just get up and stop trying to steal Sarah's spotlight." Her breath was warm against my ear, her words colder than ice. My chest caved in. My own mother, who should have been my first defender, was now my harshest accuser. My lips quivered, but no words came. Tears slid sideways into my hair, pooling against the cold floor. The garage light flickered faintly, a harsh white that made everything look sharper. Sarah's smirk, Robert's glare, Linda's empty eyes. Outside, laughter and clinking glasses carried on, indifferent, cruel. The ocean breeze drifted through the open door, bringing with it the faint crash of waves, steady, eternal, a cruel reminder of how small my cries were. Her words were a knife, and in that moment I wasn't just unseen, I was erased. The minutes dragged, heavy and merciless. Sweat rolled down my face, mixing with tears, soaking into the concrete. The numbness crept higher, tingling into my stomach, threatening to choke me with terror. I scraped my fingers weakly against the floor, the sound harsh, desperate, proof that some part of me still worked. "Please," I rasped, my throat raw. "Please, someone." No one came. Guests peeked into the garage, their faces half lit by the glow of the party. Some chuckled, others shook their heads. Not one of them moved closer. Not one of them pulled out a phone. "Get up, Emily!" Robert's voice thundered again, louder this time, furious. "Stop this nonsense before you ruin the night!" Sarah twirled her drink lazily, her tone light, cruel, designed to cut. "Yeah, Em, you should have been an actress. This is your best role yet." Their words layered over each other, a chorus of disbelief, dismissal, disdain. It pressed down on me heavier than the numbness in my legs. I focused on the sounds to stay awake. The muffled thump of the bass, the clink of glasses, the ocean breeze whispering past the door. Every detail carved itself into me, searing the betrayal deeper into memory. 20 minutes passed like this. 20 minutes of lying on the floor while my body screamed, while my voice grew hoarse, while sweat soaked through my clothes. 20 minutes where I was invisible, reduced to a sideshow while the party pulsed on. By the time the thought of help even brushed across anyone's mind, I had already drowned in despair. Her words echoed still, looping endlessly. Drama queen, spotlight, they chained themselves to me until I couldn't tell if it was her voice or mine accusing me. Her words were a knife. I was nothing to them. And in the silence between my sobs, one question cut deeper than the pain in my body. How could my own mother say that? The cold from the garage floor seeped into my bones, though my skin was slick with sweat. My throat burned raw, every plea tearing me open. "Please, please call 911. I can't move." My voice cracked, echoing in the dim, cavernous space, but the sounds outside drowned me out. Music thumped from the backyard, a deep bass that rattled the walls, and laughter floated in on the salty breeze from the ocean. The world carried on, golden and alive, while I lay broken in the shadows. Through the haze, my father's voice cut in, sharp, annoyed, impatient, not alarmed. Robert stood over the grill on the patio, his face lit orange by firelight, a beer balanced in one hand as though nothing were wrong. "Stop freaking people out!" he barked, his voice booming. He didn't even glance my way. "Emily, quit shaming the family and get up already!" His words hit harder than the fall itself. I could barely turn my head, but I could see him tending the sizzling meat, smoke curling upward, carrying the smell of charred steak. He didn't see me, not really. To him, I wasn't his injured daughter. I was a nuisance interrupting his party. My lips trembled as I forced a whisper past the dryness in my throat. "Dad, I can't." It came out hoarse, nearly lost in the noise. He didn't hear, or worse, he chose not to. Then came Linda. Her voice glided into the garage, deceptively smooth, polished for her audience. She smiled faintly at a pair of guests, craning their necks to watch. "Don't mind her," she said, her tone light, casual, as if brushing away a child's tantrum. "She's just drunk. Emily does this sometimes." The words hollowed me out. Drunk? The lie seeped into the room, filling it faster than the smoke from the grill. "No!" I gasped, shaking my head against the concrete, every motion a struggle. I'm not drunk. Please, I can't feel my legs. Please believe me. But it was too late. Guests chuckled, nodding. One leaned toward another, whispering, "She's just drunk, right?" The other grinned and shrugged. Their eyes flicked toward me not with fear, but with amusement, as though I were part of the entertainment. Then I saw it. The faint red glow of a recording light. Phones aimed at me, capturing every moment. My humiliation was no longer confined to the garage. It was being saved, immortalized. I dug my fingertips into the concrete, trying to prove I was real, my pain real. My arms trembled, quivering violently as I attempted to push myself up, but they collapsed under me and I crashed back down. The sound, my body hitting the floor again, drew laughter from the doorway. A girl stifled her giggle behind a manicured hand. The camera didn't waver. Linda's voice sliced through again, louder this time, carried with authority. "She's always dramatic. This isn't new." Her dismissal silenced me for a moment, not because I had no words, but because they had stolen their meaning. I forced my lungs to work, dragged air into them, and screamed again. "Please, call 911. I need help. I can't move." The desperation in my voice scraped like glass, but the more I pleaded, the more the crowd leaned away. Their smirks deepened. Some shook their heads as if to say, "Poor Emily." Some chuckled into their drinks, and some kept filming. Each phone lens was a silent judge, reducing me to nothing more than a performance gone wrong. A bitter nausea swelled inside me, the taste of bile rising in my throat. My stomach clenched violently, twisting, and the tingling in my legs, my absent legs, spread higher, crawling toward my stomach, my chest. Panic coiled tighter, its grip suffocating. My heart hammered, irregular and too fast, like it was trying to escape my ribcage. Sounds distorted. The bass of the music warped into a war drum. The hiss of fat on the grill became a whispering snake in my ears. Laughter bent into grotesque echoes that seemed to come from everywhere at once. My own breath rattled in my throat, shallow, frantic, as if the air itself was running out. I was sinking. That's the only way I can describe it. The ocean outside the house seemed to seep through the walls, filling the garage. Each crash of the waves in the distance mirrored the pull I felt, dragging me under further and further into silence. "Stop embarrassing yourself!" Robert shouted again, his voice carrying across the patio. He didn't even step closer, didn't even look at me. He was more concerned with the guests than with the fact that his daughter couldn't lift herself from the floor. His tone was final, merciless, sealing me off from compassion. "She's fine," Linda added, firm now, sealing the lie as truth in the eyes of everyone around us. "Emily's always been like this." Relief passed through the crowd at her words, like they were grateful to accept the easier story. Dramatic, attention-seeking Emily, the drunk sister. It was safer for them than facing the possibility that something real, something terrifying was happening right in front of them. Tears streaked hot across my temples, pooling in my hairline. Salt filled my mouth, bitter on my lips. The party lights spilled into the garage in uneven pulses, flickering against the oily floor where I had fallen, glinting off the phone lenses that still recorded. Every flicker was a reminder. They were watching, but not helping. The longer I lay there, the smaller I became. Not just physically, but in their eyes, in their world. I wasn't a daughter, I wasn't a sister, I wasn't even human anymore. I was a spectacle, a shadow stretched across Sarah's party. Inside, I screamed silently. Wouldn't they care if it were Sarah lying here? Wouldn't they drop everything, panic, rush to her side if she were the one sprawled on the floor? But me? Nothing. The numbness crawled higher, stealing the air from my lungs. Each breath was shallower, each gasp harder. Fear clawed its way through me, relentless, unforgiving. My voice failed at last, too broken to rise above the laughter and the music. And in the heavy silence between sobs, one thought consumed me, drowning out everything else. The music, the laughter, the waves, even my father's commands and my mother's lies. Would anyone help me? The world had shrunk to the cold floor beneath me, the taste of salt in my mouth, the buzzing in my ears. My pleas had turned into hoarse whispers, my voice frayed until even I could barely hear it. The laughter outside still pulsed, the music still thudded, the ocean waves crashed steady beyond the patio, and for a moment I believed no one would ever see me. Then, footsteps, rapid, purposeful. Not the hesitant shuffle of a guest peeking in, not the careless stride of someone ready to mock me. These were different. "Move! Let me through!" a woman's voice rang out, cutting sharp through the haze. The crowd parted reluctantly, their murmurs rising in confusion, and then she appeared, Lisa. She was one of Sarah's invited colleagues, a psychologist, though until that moment I had barely noticed her at the party. Now she knelt beside me, her face etched with concern, her hands steady as they hovered over my body. "Don't touch her, she's faking," Sarah scoffed, her words sharp and dismissive, but Lisa ignored her. Her eyes swept over me quickly, clinical but kind. She touched the side of my neck, feeling for a pulse, then glanced at my legs. "She can't move," Lisa said firmly, her voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "She needs an ambulance, now." The room shifted. The laughter dimmed. Guests who had been smirking just moments ago froze, eyes darting between Lisa and me. "I already told you, she's drunk," Linda interjected, her tone firm, rehearsed, like she was managing a crisis at a corporate dinner party. "Emily does this. It's nothing serious." But Lisa's tone cut through like a scalpel. "She's not drunk. She has spinal trauma. If we wait, it could cost her everything." She pulled her phone out, dialed with quick precision. "Yes, we need paramedics immediately. Spinal injury, coastal residence, urgent." Her voice was calm, steady, but I clung to it like a lifeline. "Breathe," she whispered, softer now, her eyes meeting mine. "Help's coming. You're not alone anymore." The words cracked something inside me. After endless minutes of being erased, someone finally saw me. But the relief barely settled when another twist cut through. Lisa's eyes darted to the garage floor. Her hand brushed over the sheen where I had fallen, slick against her fingertips. "What is this?" she muttered, lifting her fingers into the light. Oil, clear, undeniable. Sarah stiffened. Her friends shifted uneasily. "Sarah?" Lisa asked, her voice calm but piercing. Sarah's face drained of color, then twisted into a pout. "It was just a prank," she blurted. "I only wanted her to slip a little, maybe fall into the pool. It wasn't supposed to—" Her eyes flicked to Linda, panicked. "Mom, tell them. I didn't mean it, Mom." For one horrifying moment, the garage fell silent, and then Linda moved. She swept forward, too fast, too frantic. She grabbed a rag from a nearby shelf and dropped to her knees, furiously wiping at the oil, as though scrubbing could erase the truth. "There's nothing here," she hissed, her voice trembling, eyes darting to the guests. "Nothing to see. Accidents happen all the time. Don't make this into something it isn't." My stomach turned. She knew. She had known. From the beginning, she had chosen Sarah over me, not just with words, not just with favoritism, but with action. She was ready to erase me entirely to keep Sarah safe. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A few looked away. Others whispered, their murmurs laced with unease. The spell of dismissal was breaking, shattered by Lisa's calm authority and Linda's frantic denial. The wail of sirens pierced the air, faint at first, then swelling louder, closer. Red and blue lights flashed against the garage walls as paramedics rushed in. For the first time, the party stilled. The music cut, the laughter died. The glow of celebration was eclipsed by flashing emergency lights, harsh and unrelenting. "Step back, please!" a paramedic barked, pushing through the crowd. They knelt beside me, their voices brisk, practiced. "Spinal injury suspected. We need a board. Easy, careful." And then a pause. One of them gestured toward the corner. "Is that a camera?" I turned my head weakly, and there it was, the faint blinking red light I had noticed before. Hidden high in the shadows, its tiny glow pulsed steadily, as if it had been watching everything. The paramedic frowned, speaking to his partner. "This has been recording the whole time. Someone set this up." My chest tightened. Recording? A witness? My mind spun, flashing back to the letter I had once glimpsed in my mother's closet. The will, the mistake we can never admit. Was this connected? Who had planted that camera and why? The paramedics lifted me carefully, their hands firm but gentle, strapping me onto the board. My body was rigid, paralyzed, but my mind raced faster than ever. Lisa leaned down one last time, her voice steady in my ear. "You're safe now. Just breathe. We'll get you through this." I clung to her words, even as my eyes flicked again to the blinking light in the corner. Relief battled suspicion in my chest, warring with the betrayal that still burned. Lisa had saved me. But that camera meant someone knew more than they should. Someone had been watching long before tonight. As the stretcher rolled out, the cool night air hit my face, mingling with the distant roar of the ocean. Guests whispered behind me, their voices sharp with guilt and fear. Sarah cried, insisting she hadn't meant it. Linda's voice trembled as she tried to silence the panic, but none of it mattered, because for the first time the truth was undeniable. And yet, even as the sirens wailed louder and the crowd fell into stunned silence, one question gnawed at me, heavier than the straps across my chest. What else were they hiding? The first thing that broke through the fog was the sound. Beep, beep, beep. Steady, relentless, mechanical. It pulled me back from darkness like a thread, anchoring me to a body that no longer felt like mine. My eyelids lifted with effort, and the world came into focus. Stark white walls, a harsh fluorescent light buzzing faintly overhead, and the sharp sterile tang of antiseptic in the air. I tried to move. Nothing. My legs stayed still, foreign, as though they had been replaced with dead weight. A wave of dread surged up my chest, tightening my throat until I could barely breathe. The door opened, and the doctor entered. His shoes clicked softly against the tile, his face drawn and serious, a clipboard tucked under his arm. He paused at the foot of my bed, and in that pause I already knew. "Emily," he said gently, his voice steady but lined with gravity, "we've reviewed your MRI results." His eyes flickered to mine, softened with pity. "You've sustained an L1 spinal cord injury. The damage is severe." My lips trembled. Severe? How severe? He shifted closer, pulling the clipboard against his chest as if bracing himself. "It means there is a very high chance you won't regain function in your legs. The delay in receiving medical attention, it worsened the injury. Had you been stabilized earlier, the prognosis might have been different." The delay. My chest clenched so hard it felt like it might cave in. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pleading, of being mocked, ignored, erased. 20 minutes that had cost me my future. My voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. "So, I could be paralyzed?" His expression did not change, but his silence said everything. Then he gave a slow, weighted nod. "There's still a chance of partial improvement with aggressive therapy, but we have to prepare for the possibility this paralysis is permanent." Permanent. The word echoed, sharp and merciless. The fluorescent light above me blurred as tears filled my eyes. The beeping of the monitor carried on, indifferent, like it was mocking me. When the doctor left, I turned my face toward the window. Beyond the sterile glass, I could see the ocean shimmering in the distance, its waves rolling endlessly against the California shore. They looked alive, endless, while I lay here broken, motionless. I willed myself to move, to twitch a toe, to feel something, anything. Nothing answered. My legs were gone. The door cracked open again. This time it wasn't for me. 2 nurses stood in the hallway, their voices hushed but not enough to hide from my ears. "She's been here 2 days, one whispered. "Has her family come?" the other asked. "No," came the reply. "Not once. No visits at all." The word stabbed deeper than the diagnosis. No visits. Not even a single one. My father, who barked at me to get up. My mother, who whispered venom in my ear. Sarah, who laughed while I fell. None of them had come, not even to see if I was alive. Hot tears slid down into my hairline, stinging my skin. My body was broken, but it wasn't just my spine. My heart felt splintered, pulverized. My spine was broken, I whispered into the empty room, but their absence shattered my heart. I wanted to scream, to rip the IV from my arm, to demand answers. Instead, I just lay there in a sterile bed, drowning in betrayal, my sobs muffled by the constant hum of machines. Hours blurred. The light shifted from harsh white to the dim yellow of evening, painting shadows across the room. That's when the knock came, firm, official. A police officer stepped in, his uniform crisp, his expression clipped with professionalism. "Miss Clark," he said, standing at my bedside. He held a folder in one hand. "We've confirmed the spill in the garage was not an accident." My throat tightened. "Not an accident?" He nodded. "Multiple witnesses admitted to hearing your sister describe the prank, and we've recovered video evidence." My heart stuttered. "Video?" "Yes. A camera was recording in the garage. We don't yet know who set it up, but the footage confirms the incident was intentional." Relief and horror tangled in my chest. Relief that finally, the truth was undeniable. Horror that my humiliation, my pain, my paralysis had been preserved forever on film. My family's betrayal immortalized, undeniable, unchangeable. The officer continued, "There will be a full investigation. Charges are possible. For now, our priority is ensuring you have what you need to recover." Charges, investigation, justice. Words that should have brought comfort only left me hollow, because justice could punish Sarah, could expose Linda and Robert's lies, but it could never undo what had been stolen from me. It could never change the fact that my own family had chosen cruelty over love. When the officer left, the silence settled again. I turned toward the window, watching the ocean. The waves kept moving, steady and endless, just like they had the night I lay broken on the garage floor. They roared without care, indifferent to me, to my pain. I pressed my palms against the blanket, desperate to anchor myself. I could still feel my hands, my arms. But below that, nothing. Empty space where my legs used to be. Tears burned my eyes. But beneath them, something else began to take shape. Anger. It curled low and hot in my chest, sharper than grief, steadier than despair. They had left me on that floor. They had mocked me, lied about me, abandoned me, and even here, where my future had been stripped away, they couldn't bother to show up. My grief was crushing, but my anger was fire, and in that fire, something else sparked, a resolve. I stared at the ceiling, my voice cracking as I whispered the question that wouldn't let me go. How could they not even show up? The first piece of news came in a headline that flashed across the hospital TV. My heart lurched as I read it out loud to myself, barely believing the words. "Local woman arrested for reckless endangerment after family party incident." Sarah's name was there in black and white, no longer untouchable, no longer shielded by my parents' excuses. For the first time, the truth had a voice louder than hers. I closed my eyes and let out a shaky breath. Justice had cracked open the mask she wore for years. I thought of her smirk in that garage, her laughter as I lay paralyzed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. But the news didn't stop with her. My parents, Robert and Linda, were also facing negligence charges. The words parental responsibility and failure to seek timely aid stung when the officer explained them to me. They weren't just phrases on a legal document. They were a mirror of those 20 minutes where they turned their backs while I begged. And yet, hearing it out loud was a strange kind of balm. The world finally saw what I had lived through. Rehab became my new battlefield. The first time I wheeled myself into the gym, the smell of rubber mats and disinfectant filled my lungs. Rows of equipment lined the room, parallel bars, resistance bands, weight machines. But all I saw was the wheelchair under me, heavy and awkward, a cage with wheels. That's when Jenna appeared. My mentor, assigned to me by the center, wheeled herself over with the grace of someone who had long since made peace with her body's limits. She wore a bright scarf, her smile warm and certain. "You're stronger than you know," Jenna said, steadying me as I gripped the bars with trembling arms. Her hands were firm, her eyes unwavering. She didn't pity me. She believed in me. And in that moment, I borrowed her belief until it started to grow into my own. Day after day, I pushed harder. The burn in my shoulders, the ache in my arms, the calluses forming on my palms, each was proof that I wasn't done, that my story didn't end in that garage. I learned how to balance, how to turn sharply, how to transfer from chair to bed without help. Every small victory mattered. And then there was Alex, my rehab coach, with calm patience in his voice and a quiet strength in his presence. He was never loud, never forceful, just steady. The first time I managed to wheel myself across the gym without stopping, his words reached me in a way no one else has had. "I see you, Emily." Simple, But it undid me, because for so long I had been invisible. To hear someone say they saw me, it was everything. Between rehab sessions, I found myself staring at a laptop in my small, accessible coastal apartment. The sea breeze slipped in through the cracked window, carrying salt and gull cries as I logged into my online psychology courses. Class discussions, late-night essays, case studies, it all reminded me why I had chosen this path: to understand, to heal, to rebuild. The day I clicked submit on my master's thesis, I cried, not from grief this time, but from pride. When the settlement came, $2 million awarded in damages, I expected to feel triumph. And in some ways, I did. It meant independence. It meant security. It meant they couldn't erase me or dismiss me anymore. But money couldn't fill the space my family had carved out of me. That hollow deepened when the twist came. It was Claire, my cousin, the one person I had believed was in my corner. She was the one who had always whispered encouragement when I was younger, who slipped me candy at family dinners, who I thought of as an ally. But the investigation revealed the truth. Claire had been the one who managed the camera. She had seen the evidence, but instead of coming forward immediately, she held it back, protecting Sarah for as long as she could, protecting the golden child just like everyone else. When I confronted her, her excuses were brittle. "I didn't know what to do. I thought it would ruin everything." Her words hit harder than I expected, not because they surprised me, but because they proved the betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined, even Claire. That night, lying in my bed with the soft hum of the ocean outside, I whispered to myself, Claire's lies stung, but I was building my own family now. And it was true. My chosen family was there. Jenna, with her unshakable faith in me. Alex, whose quiet presence anchored me. Friends from my online classes who celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. People who saw me, who cared, without condition. One evening, after a grueling rehab session, Alex pushed my chair to the balcony of my apartment. The sunset washed the ocean in streaks of orange and pink, gulls wheeling overhead. He leaned against the railing, quiet as always, then said softly, "You've come further than you think." I turned toward him, the breeze cooling the sweat still damp on my neck. For the first time in a long time, I let myself smile, not out of politeness, but from something real. The justice system had taken Sarah away in handcuffs. The law had turned its gaze on my parents. The settlement had secured my independence. And yet, the betrayals still echoed, fresh and sharp. Could I ever forgive them? 2 years later, mornings no longer felt like battles for survival. They felt like quiet victories. The first sound wasn't the beep of a monitor or the shuffle of nurses. It was the click of my crutches tapping against the hardwood of my coastal apartment. Each sound echoed like a drumbeat of resilience, proof that I had clawed my way back to something resembling life. The balcony doors stood open, letting in the salty tang of the Pacific. Sunlight poured through, warm against my skin, catching on the steel braces that hugged my legs. Walking was still deliberate. Step, brace, shift, but every movement belonged to me. Alex stood nearby, leaning against the counter, his arms folded as if he was forcing himself not to intervene. His smile was soft, proud, the kind of smile that steadied me when my body threatened to collapse. I made it to the dining table, my arms trembling, sweat dripping down my back. Collapsing into a chair, I caught my breath as Alex set a mug of tea before me. "You're unstoppable now," he said, his voice steady, certain. I laughed, breathless and raw. 2 years ago, I couldn't even lift my head from that cold garage floor. Now I was walking, slowly, painfully, but walking. That afternoon, the past came back to me in a plain, battered envelope. It was waiting on the table when I returned from rehab, my name scrawled across it in a handwriting I knew by heart. My fingers shook as I tore it open, the rough paper scratching against my skin. The letter began with words that stole my breath. "I knew about the will," Sarah wrote. My heart dropped. Mom and Dad told me everything. They said I was the chosen one, that the assets had to stay with me no matter what. I'm sorry, Emily. I never thought it would go this far. The ink was smeared in places, but the meaning was crystal clear. I read the words over and over, my tears staining the paper. That old letter I had once found in Mom's closet, the one marked, "The mistake we can never admit," suddenly had a voice. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't imagination. It had all been real. They had decided my worth years before I fell. The apology felt hollow, a pebble tossed into the canyon of betrayal. Forgiveness didn't come. Not then, maybe not ever. But understanding did. For the first time, the shadows were gone. The truth was out in the open, and in that truth, I felt something solid beneath my feet. Their apologies didn't matter anymore. Their lies didn't matter. I had already built something stronger, my own power. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into its envelope. Then I set it aside. My life didn't belong to their secrets anymore. At the rehab center the next morning, sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long lines of light across the gym floor. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and determination. I gripped the parallel bars, my arms trembling as I moved forward. Step, drag, brace, lift. Each motion was a war, but I was winning. Jenna clapped once, sharp and encouraging. "You're stronger than you know," she said, her voice brimming with certainty. Beyond the bars, Alex stood waiting, his gaze locked on mine. "I see you, Emily," he murmured, and those 4 words filled the room more than any cheer. Later that evening, I wheeled myself into a circle of survivors at the community support group. The room smelled of coffee and faint candle wax, filled with faces carrying scars, some visible, others not. I looked at them and saw pieces of myself. When I spoke, my voice didn't tremble. "Your pain deserves to be seen," I said. "Your story matters. No one gets to take that from you." Heads nodded, eyes filled, some with tears, some with relief. In that moment, I wasn't Emily the victim. I wasn't Emily the forgotten daughter. I was Emily the counselor, Emily the mentor, Emily who had survived. Back at home, as dusk painted the ocean in ribbons of fire and gold, I thought about the will. The secret that had once been buried in boxes and whispers was now nothing more than paper. Justice had stripped it bare. My parents' favoritism, their choices, their betrayals, they no longer defined me. I pressed my palm against the window pane, watching the waves crash steady and endless. Resilience, I realized, wasn't about pretending it hadn't happened. It was about building anyway, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. Not for pity, not for revenge, but because maybe you've been there too. Maybe your pain was dismissed as drama or weakness or nothing at all. Maybe someone told you to get up when you were shattered inside. If that's you, hear me now. Your pain is real. It deserves validation. And even when betrayal cuts the deepest, resilience can rebuild a life. So I'll leave you with this. If your pain was dismissed by family, how did you find the strength to believe in yourself? Comment your story below. Like and subscribe to support this channel. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because healing is hard, but you are stronger than you think. As the last light slipped beneath the horizon and the ocean roared steady outside my window, one question remained. It echoed through me, the same one I now ask you. What helped you trust your own strength?